अच्छा, अब हमारे पास क्या है? we're going to be looking at the entry of water into the plant, right? We're going to be discussing, there are three things that we would have to discuss. uh, you would have to discuss the entry of water in plant into plant. We would have to discuss movement of water up the xylem, and we would have to discuss the movement of water the out of plant, right? So in the first one is related to the movement of water into the roots, right? When water is going to move into the roots, then the water moves up the xylem vessel. How does it, what are the factors? And then we have the third and last, evaporation and transpiration. We have already discussed the difference between evaporation and transpiration when we were doing photosynthesis. We would also have to discuss the factors that affect the transpiration. What are the factors that are influential in altering the rate of transpiration and evaporation, inshallah? So this is what is left in this topic, inshallah. So we'll start with the entry of water in the plant. Okay, we'll start with entry of water into plant. Basic thing that we need to know about this is that absorption of water takes place through roots. Okay, roots do not only absorb water, but they're also absorbing mineral salts and ions. So roots are take up water, ions and minerals. All right, minerals which are essential for the plant growth, like magnesium, which is essential for the formation of chlorophyll, like nitrates, which are essential for the formation of amino acids, right? From glucose, sodium, and etc. So this is what this is what how the minerals, what the root actually takes up. All right, we know that the root hair, the root hair cells, this is there's root, and then there's the root, basically root hair. When we talk about the root, the root that is at the outer part, the cells that are at the outer part of the root generally are something like this. They appear to be something like this, right? You can see there are tiny hair like structures. They're very tiny. So if you take a look at them, basically they are called the root hair cells. They're specialized cells. All right, they're the root hair cells. They are specialized cells. All right, this is what they are. They are normal cells which have all of those structures that a plant cell has, with an exception of protruding part, that is this root hair, which is called the root hair. So it has the cell wall. All right, it has cell membrane. All right, it has a big vacuole which extends into the root hair cell. root hair as well. It extends into the root hair like this, right? It has nucleus, it has mitochondria. It does not really have any chloroplast because there's no need for that. It has mitochondria. We're going to be studying generally nucleus and all those structures. This is the big vacuole that is there. All right. This is generally a plant cell, a root hair cell. So, what is their adaptation? We'll study that. How the water is basically taken up. This is what we have to study. Are you following?
हम्म। जी।
So basically, there are a few things that we have to keep in mind. The entry of water, how the entry of water takes place. Entry of water. Basically, we all know the vacuole of the root hair cell. Of the root hair cell, it has a fluid in it, right? It is full of fluid, right, which is called the cell sap. Has cell sap. This cell sap has dissolved nutrients and mineral ions in it, right? So this cell sap has a high solute potential, or in other words, you can say it has low water potential. Why? Due to the presence of solute, right? Due to solute present, a lot of solute is there. It has a low water potential as compared to the soil, which has a higher water potential, right? So which means that the cell sap is concentrated. Basically, it means that it is concentrated as compared to the soil outside. So cell sap is more concentrated than the soil, right? Soil is less concentrated, which makes as compared to the soil. So soil has a low water potential. Sorry, soil has a high water potential. Soil has a high water potential. This is the sign for water potential. So it has a high water potential. This means that by osmosis, water from the soil moves, water from the soil moves into the root hair cell, right? Due to large concentration of, due to a concentrated cell sap. Do you understand? Are you getting this point? So the water particles outside are going to, water is going to move inside the root hair cell because of the concentrated sap. Is this making sense? Ji Hadia, any queries till now?
नहीं.
Hmm. Are you able to follow? What is the point that you do not get? Hmm? This is a.
तो मैं जा गई.
All right. I thought you were saying no. You didn't get any. You didn't get this, any concept. All right. So the movement of water is going to be from the outside. All right. It's going to be from the soil into the root by osmosis due to a large difference of concentration. So you can say the vacuole is more concentrated than soil, right? So soil has more water, higher water potential. So it's going to, the water moves from the soil into the vacuole. Is this clear up till now? This is osmosis, the movement of water through a partially permeable membrane, which is the membrane of the cell and the vacuole itself, the tonoplast. This movement is going to be osmosis, right? But what happens? How does vacuole, how does vacuole maintain maintains maintains the concentration, right? Because the water keeps on coming in, the plant needs water at all times. So it keeps on absorbing water. Obviously, when a large amount of water comes into the cell sap, into the root hair cell, so it's going to become dilute, right? It's going to eventually, the gradient is going to flatten, right? Eventually, the gradient between, if you draw the diagram, you will see eventually the gradient between the vacuole and the soil would gradually die out, right? And the movement of water is going to eventually stop. But the vacuole, the root hair cell has a large number, uh, root hair cell has a large number of mitochondria. All right. By using the mitochondria, there's a large amount of energy that is there that can be used by the root hair cell. So by active transport, mineral ions like magnesium, nitrates, and sodium, potassium, such mineral ions are, by active transport, such mineral ions are taken up by a root hair cell to make its vacuole or cell sap more concentrated, and eventually maintain its concentration, and hence the gradient, the concentration gradient, right? Or you can say the difference in the potential, the difference in the water potential, difference in water potential of soil and cell sap, or in other words, the root hair cell. Is this clear?
जी
So what is going on? The root hair cell has a large vacuole that extends into the root hair, which actively takes up ions like magnesium, sodium, potassium, and others, so that it can maintain to keep concentrated, so that the water, so that there is a potential difference that is always maintained, a potential difference between the soil, water potential difference between, or the concentration gradient between the soil and the vacuole is maintained, right? Vacuole is more concentrated, soil is less. So the water is going to be moving against the concentration gradient from soil into the vacuum, right? Is this clear?
जी
Were you able to write all of that?
हम्म
Are you sure?
जी
All right. So this is how water actually entered into the root hair cell, into the plant. Now it has to make all of the journey towards, has to make journey all the way towards the xylem vessel so that it can be transported further, right? So what happens from there onwards? Once the water has entered, now generally you will see in the books and everywhere, you will be able to see that it is generally the root hair cell is like this, and then there are adjacent cells to it, right? There are adjacent cells up till the sink and up till the xylem vessel. All right. So what is going to what is going on? Once the root hair cell has taken up a lot of once the root hair cell has taken up a lot of water from the soil, once the root hair cell has taken up water, it becomes a region of higher water potential as compared to adjacent cells, right? To the adjacent cells, the cells which are the cells to the adjacent cells, like we can call them A, B, C, and D, right? So if you look at it, cell A becomes a region of lower water potential as compared to the root hair cell once the water is taken up. So cell, if you talk about cell A is at lower water potential as compared to root hair cell, right? So the water is going to move from root hair cell into A. This makes cell B a region of lower water potential as compared to cell A. So the water is going to move from A to B. Keeping in mind that the ions are being actively taken up by the root hair cell, and it is constantly keeping up the concentration gradient with the soil, so the water keeps on moving in. You understand? Something very important.
जी. हम्म.
Root hair cell maintains the concentration gradient with soil by active transport, right? So the water keeps on moving in constantly, and once more water moves in, A is going to become a region of lower water potential. The water moves in from the root hair cell into the cell A. Once the cell A receives this amount of water, cell B becomes a region of lower water potential, and the water moves from A to B. Once B receives the water from A, it becomes a region of higher water potential as compared to cell C. So the cell C becomes a region of lower water potential. So B is going to move, the water will move from B to C, right? And once the C receives water, D becomes a region of lower water potential and water moves from C to D. Similarly, it ultimately starts moving up the xylem vessel. All right, all of this movement, once it has been established, also develops a root pressure. It establishes a root pressure. We'll talk about it. All right, so we'll write it down. When cell A receives water, it becomes, when cell A receives water, it becomes a region of higher water potential as compared to B. So the water moves from B to, so the water moves from B to from A to B. B. Similarly, from there onwards, cell C becomes a region of lower water potential, right? Of lower water potential. Comparing it with comparing with B, so the water will move from B to C. You understand? And from C to D, and from C to D, and from D to xylem. There could be more cells. You're just trying to understand. Do you understand? All of these cells from root hair up till there are called cortex cells. This is the cortex, the root, the cortex of the root, right? Remember? cortex of root. This is the root hair cell. This is the root hair cell. It is a specialized cell, different from all the cortex cells. If you could recall the images, you see, this is the root. The root xylem is present in between. These are the cortex cells here, this region. Remember, the cortex cells, the water moves from the root hair to the cortex cells and into the xylem vessel, like that. Is making sense, Adia? All right. So this is how basically water tends to move up to the xylem vessel, right? I want to highlight few points over here. Adaptations. All right. What are the adaptations of the root here? Cell. This is which we would have discussed that in when we were discussing cells, but still, so it has extended hair like structure with cell sap to increase the surface area to volume ratio, right? Then
Hmm.
large number of mitochondria to do what? For active transport of ions to maintain the concentration, right? And then we have another point, that large vacuole to potentially change and maintain concentration gradient, right? Concentration gradient against who? Against soil, right?
Green. Sir,
Yes.
um,